It's coffee time. It's so humid in my apartment right now. It's already been humid for like a few days in a row, and I don't even want to think about what summer's going to be like. It's not even really spring yet, and it's already just feeling really warm all the time. And I don't like to leave my AC on, so I just don't. I like try to leave the windows open a lot and the patio door and stuff like that. But even with that, man, the air circulation in this apartment is just bad. It's like real bad. Not a fan. My hair's getting greasy real fast. Like I wash it, and if I'm in the apartment for most of the day, by the end of the day, my hair's like grease city. It's real bad. So I'll take a shower tonight. I hate when it gets to that point, and for those of you who live in just constantly hot climates, like this is not a hot climate. This is like a temperate climate. But for those of you who live in constantly hot climates, I don't know whether or not this is weird, but I hate the feeling of being sweaty all day and then going to bed sweaty. Hate it. And for those of you who live in places where you're sweaty all the time, I don't know how you do it, man. I couldn't. I just don't think I could. Although, I didn't think that I would get acclimated to this weather ever. And this weather isn't even bad. But I was convinced that this was going to feel horrendously hot for the rest of my life. Like, for the entire time that I would be in LA, I would feel like it was always hot. And now I'm getting very used to it. And sometimes when I go back to Oregon, for the most part, I'm fine. But every now and then, there will be a day where I'm like, God, it's really cold, right? And everybody's like, not really. So maybe I could adjust. Like if I moved somewhere super hot, like real hot, like Mordor, maybe I could get used to it. Maybe I could get used to Mordor. But hobbits probably don't get used to Mordor. So we'll move on from that whole concept. Today was podcast day. Got all the podcasts done. We talked about Kuroko no Basque, and for the most part, the discussion wound up not being about Kuroko no Basque. I mean, it was, but not really what we had read. It was just, I don't know. It was it was a funny manga pod. We were very distracted, and all of us have either seen the anime past the point that we read, or we've read past the point that we read. So we constantly had to stop ourselves from saying things because it was hard to remember where the end point was, like how much we had read, how much we knew before, what had already been revealed. We were just like, and Erin especially keeps up with it. So she knows so much. She's on like they're in the 200s now, right? Chapter 200 and something. I don't even know. Guys, I don't even know. But yeah, it's a lot going on there. Kuroko's so good. Oh man, guys. Kuroko A+ manga and A+ anime. It was fun to talk about. It was good because both Erin and I get very heavily engaged with fandoms. Like when we're really into something, we follow it real closely. Like ever since we finished watching Hannibal, I go on the Hannibal tag on Tumblr every single day and see how far the fandom is already devolving into just nonsense, because it happens real quick. But I love that. I love being able, with Kuroko, I love being able to have Erin to just be like, this thing, and she's like, I know, right? That thing, and then it all comes together. It all makes sense. Oh man, but I tried making pesto again tonight. I was very excited. So last time that I made the pesto, I think I remember telling you guys that it was a little too garlicky. Like, didn't know that was possible for me. A little too garlicky. So this time, I made pesto. It turned into one of those days where I had eaten leftovers for lunch. I wasn't entirely done with the manga, so I read the rest of the manga, and then I got distracted by a bunch of stuff. And Sam was like, what are we gonna eat for dinner? And I was like, I don't know. And he had wound up eating a pizza earlier, so he wasn't like in dire straits, but I felt like I needed to eat before MangaPod. So I wound up just going into the kitchen and being like, what do I have? What can I make right now? what do I have? And fortunately, I had everything to make the pesto. So I made pesto again and actually followed the legitimate instructions of how much garlic to put in, and it was perfect. Who knew? So made the pesto, added it to some whole wheat rotini, but then also I had a few olives left over in the fridge, so I sliced up the olives, and then I just bought tomatoes, so I put tomatoes in there, and I still had a little bit of corn left in a bag of frozen corn. So I boiled up the corn while I was making the noodles, put the corn in there too. Guys, it was so good. I was so proud. I was like, man, this turned out awesome. I was just like, eating it forever. I was very excited because, like, I think that that's the goal, right? With food is to know how to make enough stuff, or at least snippets of things, that when you're at a loss of what to do or what to make, you can go in your kitchen and be like, oh, I have everything to make this. Like, that's such a good feeling. That's such a great feeling to be like, oh, I could make that thing. Oh, awesome. I could make that thing. Like, it's a great feeling. So I made that. We did co-optional podcast, and it was very silly. I love having JP. I think that JP is a great guest. And I think it's really funny because he was so heavily involved in the StarCraft community. So whenever we have him on the podcast, everybody's like, oh, are they just going to talk about StarCraft forever? Not realizing that JP does, like, everything else on his channel. Like, D&D, all sorts of different games, like, streams all the time. And it's pretty much never StarCraft. But people so heavily associate him with StarCraft. And I think that that's something that happens to a lot of people. Like PewDiePie, even though he plays so many different games, will forever be associated with weird scare cam games like Amnesia. And Jesse, I think, has successfully moved beyond that, where he was completely associated with WoW, and now he's not. And I don't know how he managed to do that, but I'm proud of him. Good job. Good job, Jesse. I don't know what I'm associated with. Cats and coffee, I think, are probably my two big things. Oh my gosh, you guys, you have to watch the new co-optional podcast animated. I'll link it. It's so funny. I was like, oh, that's a little me on the thumbnail. Is this one about me? I honestly don't ever expect them to make videos that center around me or have me talking very much, because the person who winds up having the funniest bits, just spontaneous bits, it's always Jesse. So I've kind of accepted in my heart that there's a pretty high likelihood that I won't be in a lot of these. That's kind of what I'm assuming. So imagine my surprise and my delight when it turned out that that the newest podcast animated was entirely about me and my future, ? My possible future. I thought it was so funny. I was really excited about that. But the rest of the day, just editing, exporting, played a little Dark Souls. So during the podcast, I had told TB yesterday that I wanted to talk about Dark Souls 2 on the podcast today. And TB was like, okay, cool. I get on the podcast and he's like, all right, so you played Dark Souls. And I was like, no, I actually didn't wind up playing it. And he was like, I'm sorry, why? And the reason being that originally I was going to play after Sam was done, but right when Sam had finished doing his first video, like putting his first video together, the online servers went up. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to tear him away from it now that the online like, I'm going to let him play. And he played until like 4 a.m. It was crazy. But because of that, I didn't wind up playing Dark Souls at all. And so today after the podcast, Sam was like, do you want to try playing Dark Souls? And I was like, sure. I'm going to be real bad at it, but sure. It's really fun. It's a really fun game. Real hard. But I'm enjoying it a lot more than, because I never played the first Dark Souls. I only played Demon Souls, and I was really bad at Demon Souls. And I also just didn't find it interesting at all. But Dark Souls 2, I think, is put together in a way where I find it interesting. Like the concept of it and everything. It's really fun. So, Yeah, I was playing and Sam was trying to coach me without being a backseat gamer. He was like, I want you to, learn how to do it all, but if you're having trouble, like, it's hard for me to not just say something. And I was like, no, I get it. I appreciate that. But not great at it, guys. It's fun though. You were right. A lot of the mechanics are very similar to Monster Hunter. So in that way, I'm like, this is, I understand this a bit, but at the same time, it's weird. The camera toggle is hard for me to use because for some reason I keep angling it up by accident, and then I'm like, why does it keep doing that? But I think it's me. I don't think it's the controller. It's just very frustrating. Anywho, I'm gonna go do dishes because I have so many dishes to do. Oh my goodness. But I hope you guys had an amazing day, and I will talk to you again tomorrow. Bye-bye. Mwah.